Mako Miller, and I am the Career Services Manager for the Kauffman Scholars program, which is a scholarship program that's fully funded through the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation.
Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation.
Or Kauffman Foundation for short.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's EMKF.
Yeah. EMKF. And we met a few years ago, I think, through the Diversity and Inclusion Consortium group that we were part of. And so the smile and the kindness and everything. And I was just like, I get this one. I want to have some conversations with that one.
You kind of get that feeling like, we should do this. This should happen.
This feels right. And especially in a professional setting.
Yeah.
Because you feel so isolated.
Yes.
So many times about who believes what, who upholds what, who doesn't, who, all these things that you kind of, but there was an essence and a value system that I think you and I connected on.
Yeah.
So, which brings us here today.
Yes.
Here today. And we're going to talk about your work, what you do, and talk about the youth development for talent and bridging that over into organizations in a very safe way, especially with the landscape that we see things with.
Yeah, that's the
with
keyword.
The great resignation, the great migration of everyone leaving to the gig economy, and
Yeah, good for them.
Good for them. We told y'all. We told y'all it's coming.
I know, but I'm more power to them. I'm glad that they're like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start with tell me about the Kauffman Foundation, your work. Tell me a little bit about that.
So Kauffman Scholars was started in 2003. It's a scholarship program that serves students in both the Kansas City, Kansas and the Kansas City, Missouri school districts. And so students come in as 7th graders. And through the process, middle school, high school, just helping provide support, mentorship, information about college and, getting them prepared to transition after high school. And so then the program really that monetary piece kicks in once they go to college.
Okay.
They get 5 years on the scholarship and they typically go to schools in the Kansas and Missouri region. And then once they graduate, we then support them.
He's got to have all the He's got to have a spotlight somewhere.
But once they graduate, we still, support them as young professionals and do some professional development and connect them with folks in the community and with each other. And as alums, we'll, connect them back to scholars in the program, kind of provide some mentorship opportunities. So the program inducted 8 cohorts of students. So between 2003 and 2012, I believe, they inducted a cohort of students. So they would come in as 7th graders, transition, and they brought in another group. So they did this 8 times. And so
starting at 7th grade.
So 7th grade. So a group would come in, and then once they transitioned to the 8th grade, another group of 7th graders came in.
Gotcha.
And then as people kind of trickled, through middle school into high school, the last group that they brought in was cohort 8 in 2012. Those students are now in their 5th year of college.
Wow.
And so our program is actually getting ready to sunset. So the goal is, the commitment was to, see these students through to college and through college, and getting ready to meet that 19-year commitment that started in 2003 this next academic year.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many? Oh, sorry.
Mic down.
Mic down.
I swear I didn't bump it.
There you go. How's that?
So it's pretty sturdy, actually.
Okay.
Just kind of like.
There you go. It just kind of like it gracefully passed out. Your microphone had a fainting episode.
Am I that boring? Oh my gosh, so rude.
I know, right? I'm gonna take a swig of beer after that one. So thank you for this.
Oh,
after this hot summer, hella humid day.
Oh my God,
this was your suggestion. Thank you.
Outside. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can't do warm beverages in the summer.
Ugh. So how many students altogether?
So the goal is to get to 800 total college graduates or students that have received some type of post-secondary credential.
Okay.
So we're getting there with this last group of students, and technically we went to the board and we're given an extension. So the students actually will get one more year past next summer due to COVID. A lot of the students with the transition in March of 2020 having to move off campus or drop their classes, and just with everything that happened, we thought they weren't given like a really fair shot last year. So the board said we're going to extend for one more year. And so any student who needs that additional year to finish up their credential will still receive support from the scholarship program.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many? So I assume there's some college partnerships there, or the students free to, or
yeah.
To, I mean, they're free to register or apply wherever, but I'm sure you have some partnerships.
Yes, that's it initially. So with the first couple of classes, I think the students were able to go anywhere. And then when they found out that the students weren't making maybe the most educated choices in terms of where they were attending college, we decided to start this partnership with institutions in both Kansas and Missouri. And so just saying like, okay, we're going to be sending our students to you, and knowing some of the institutions, depending on where they went, maybe had a multicultural student center that we could partner with to say, hey, can we kind of funnel our students through you guys for additional support? Or was there any type of first year program or class that your institution offers that are, we can, make sure we connect the scholars to once they enroll and they're on your campus. A couple institutions, because we had so many scholars attend, we had graduate assistants that we had hired on that were at those schools to kind of serve as additional support for those students. So yeah, we had 23 partnerships with different colleges and universities, both 2-year schools and 4-year schools in the region.
What was the purpose behind it for the foundation? What was I'm just curious to know, what was the story? What was the aha for someone to say, we should do this, and why?
Yeah. So from my understanding of the history, prior to Kauffman Scholars, there was a scholarship program called Project Choice back in the 90s. And so Mr. Kauffman had started that program, and it was, essentially a program to, help students graduate, make sure they graduate from high school, and help support them in college. Learning lessons from that program, Kauffman Scholars was born.
Okay.
And so how can we provide even more intentional support, more kind of well-rounded support for students in the Kansas City region, and make sure that we're helping prep them for college, start planting that seed early on, and then providing academic support, ACT prep, taking them to the actual campuses for visits so they could actually see the college campuses and get a better idea of where they wanted to go to school. And so, I mean, it's unlike any other program I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
The fact that some of the research I've done on scholarship programs, typically it's either a program that helps students get to college or it's a program that helps students get through college. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Whereas we're both.
Yeah, it's full cycle.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're with the student from the 7th grade all the way through college graduation. And through that process, you have different types of coaches, like life coaches, and then there's that academic, support, tutoring, like the ACT prep. They have someone their senior year just focused on college prep, helping them fill out college applications, completing financial aid, and then a summer bridge program that helps prepare them that summer between high school graduation and college. And then once they're in college, they have a coach that is visiting them if the school is, within driving distance, actually driving to the college campus and doing, check-ins just to see, how are you doing? Like that physical connection and making sure hey, I'm here if you need anything. I just want to make sure you're doing well and connected to resources. And then I think initially they didn't think about it. They were like, we just want to make sure we, help these students get post-secondary credentials. And they're like, we have all these alumni now. And so, several years ago, they started an alumni association to support the alumni once they were out, in the workforce and providing, professional development opportunities.
That's wonderful.
And, connecting them to people in Kansas City. So, it's been a program that has, adjusted, and it's been flexible and fluid because it's like, okay, this is what we initially think, will be beneficial for students. And then even as the program was progressing, they learned lessons and shifted and pivoted, and all in the interest of making sure that this was what was best for the scholars in the program. Yeah.
And I like that, unlike so many of those programs, y'all extended it into the career path.
Yeah.
You extended it into their emerging professional development and everything within, whatever decided they take as far as career.
Yeah. It was kind of like a supplemental piece to, because we know when they're in college, they have access to those supports. There's career centers on campuses, and they provide, there's programs and different things they can get involved in that have those types of, career-based activities. And so what we were providing was just something, I think, supplemental to that. So when they were home on their breaks, providing career fair opportunities with organizations and companies in Kansas City, and various other workshops when they're, home from college. And then, of course, when we still had middle school and high school students doing those workshops on resume building and cover letter writing, interviewing, stuff like that. So just providing just kind of in addition to what your high school provides or what your college is providing, just a little added piece to
full scale.
Yeah,
it feels like a full scale. Like my husband is a wound care specialist, but he's always had this dream of a clinic where it's like full body, full wellness, spirit care, all of it. It just seems like the whole development with it from student is just there. So I know listeners and people, they're just going to be like, where is that program? How do we get signed up? So let's talk. I want to talk about a little bit about the uniqueness of this particular program, and people like the students. Where's this program? Where do you get your students?
So the students came in. They advertised. Hey, there's this new scholarship program that's starting through the Kauffman Foundation, and it's from my understanding, because I wasn't there at the inception of the program, they went to the area middle schools, both on the KCK and Kansas City, Missouri sides of the state line. And
can you'll touch on kind of what the demographic of those schools, right?
Yes. So those students, parents were like, yes, like this program is going to pay for you to go to college. You are signing up for this program. And so the students and parents went through like information sessions, interview process, and then eventually folks were selected into the program. And so once that last cohort was inducted in 2012, that was it. Like, we didn't induct any more students after that. And that's just the way the grant was written up when they were putting the program together. They said 19 years, this is our commitment. We're going to see this commitment through, and that's it. So when I go out and talk about the program, I'll get emails or I'll get phone calls that say, hi, I'm interested in getting my student signed up for the Kauffman Scholars program. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, we inducted the last cohort in 2012. So the students that are in the program, that's it. So we don't have any more students. And people are always asking me like, well, why? why is that? And there's always these conspiracy theories of like, oh, you guys are out of money, or you couldn't find it, you couldn't find the funding, or whatever they might think is why. But no, it's just the way it was written up in the beginning. They just put an end date on it.
Mission was accomplished.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's a great model.
Yes. Yeah. So I think, people, so another scholarship program that people might be familiar with is KC Scholars. And that started, I think I feel like they just celebrated their 5th birthday, I want to say, but they learned some of the things that Kauffman Scholars did. And said, okay, we want to start a scholarship program. It's structured a lot differently than Kauffman Scholars, but they learn with the coaching piece and the partnerships with colleges and universities, they took some of those best practice pieces from our program and implemented them in KC Scholars. So yeah, there's still those opportunities for, scholarships for students in the Kansas City metropolitan area. It just looks a lot different than our program.
Lot different. But just everything that you just said right now, and just the fact that if more organizations, if more communities would have that kind of investment within that kind of youth development,
right?
And somebody who's worked in talent acquisition for so long, like that's what you want. You want that entry level individual, and invest in that all the way up. And again, studies, everything. Go find the research to suggest when you take that investment and just those steps along the way, you can develop an incredible employee. You can develop an incredible partner. You can develop an incredible kid, student.
It's been amazing to see. So when I started with the program, many of the students were seniors in high school.
Yeah.
And now many of them have graduated from college. They make way more money than I did when I graduated from college. And some of them have their own businesses.
Tyler Riley.
Yes.
She was on our show.
I mean, it's incredible to see them from high school student to this amazing young professional. And it's not like they didn't have any of those talents or skills or abilities. They always had those. It was just us providing just additional supports and, making sure that we encourage them to pursue those opportunities and say that we're here to support you. We're here to connect you with any resources that you need to make those things a reality for yourself, whatever that is. Because I think from a lot of the research that I've done in my doctoral work, there's this deficit language and thought process surrounding students of color. And this belief of, they are lacking, or they are the probability of them not getting to college is high, and the probability of them not graduating is high, and just this very deficit language and frame of seeing these students. And so we, kind of flip it and have this anti-deficit approach.
That's incredible. I see that.
Work.
Like, how can I get to here if I'm down, I'm starting from down here?
Yeah. So we know that they bring their own cultural and social capital to the process. And I think people, give Kauffman Scholars a lot of credit when the credit should be put back on the students and the families, that they did the work.
Yeah.
We just said, here are the resources.
Here's the framework.
There's the support, and it's up to you to do the work. And all these students did the work.
Do you know the parallel between some of the clients that I consult, and just that alone, like in human resources, it's about like, be an adult. I will give you the resources and the framework of how to lead, but be an adult.
Yes.
Like, take some action.
Right.
But here, and that's good. You give credit where credit is due. It's like, it does take hard work.
Yeah.
It is not going to be easy.
Nope.
Here's the framework. Here's what we can provide. And it runs parallel to organizations, but most organizations, I think they're trying to get there.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to get to that level of that kind of human development.
Right. And I try to tell people, like, we're not the ones that applied to college for them. I didn't take their tests. I didn't do their projects. They did all that work themselves.
Yeah.
And so it was just filling that gap in the opportunities that may not have been available to them, given, maybe where they went to school or where they are from. And I mean, in all honesty, to be blunt, being, Black and brown in this country, and looking at, the systemic racism and where that all, stems from, and why, even being someone, being a person of color, I'm half Black, and not really even understanding that about my own culture, that why were we in the situations and the positions we are currently in, not knowing any of that through my entire upbringing, and just learning that in the last 5 years, maybe. And so you realize that it's not an achievement gap thing. It's an opportunity gap.
Yeah.
It's not equitable in terms of the opportunities that, white students get versus, Black and brown students receive. And I can vouch for that. I mean, I went through that and I still didn't understand it. And I went through it.
You didn't understand the marginalization that
didn't have the words, didn't have the language around it. And I wasn't thinking about that, being in middle school, like, systemic racism. Like,
right.
I did not know those
critical
words.
race theory.
Right.
Hell no.
I don't know nothing about that stuff.
Yeah.
And so to have this this whole new world opened up in terms of, understanding, what my father went through, what my mom, who came to this country, went through. It's something they didn't talk about when I was growing up. Not sure why. I don't know if it was a protection thing, but
well, the system kept it silent.
Right. Well, yeah. And I mean, I don't know if they were just like, we're just working to, support our kids, make sure that, they do well.
This is our lot in life.
Yeah.
This is it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's almost like they just kind of accepted it.
Yeah.
And didn't, really have those types of conversations, didn't talk about race growing up. And then, being a part of, like, the DEI consortium group and going through race, equity, inclusion training and, learning about the things that we didn't learn in school really has broadened my view and my outlook. And I know I've done some things that would be considered, appealing to, like, white supremacy culture, like doing professional dress workshops with our scholars who in our program predominantly identify as Black or Latinx.
Okay.
And, not thinking about, like, identity and intersectionality and, what professionalism really means and where does that come from and why is this deemed professional and why is, this hairstyle not knowing that and doing those workshops. I was so ignorant to that.
It's so much.
And then when I come to realize this and learn, like, yeah, no, do you understand, like, what that, when you're doing these professional dress workshops, what that means and who defined professionalism? I'm like, oh.
You can't not see it once you see what you've done. You can't not
unsee it. Yeah.
You can't unsee it. You can't, like, and if people call that woke, hashtag woke, call it woke,
whatever it
like,
is.
you can't unsee it.
I was really, in a sense, you're kind of almost ashamed. Like, why didn't I know that? You don't want to admit that, oh, I didn't really understand that. It's like, Mako, you're Black. Like, why didn't you know that? But then, talking to other, either mixed race people or other Black friends and colleagues and saying, yeah, there's still some stuff that even over this last year that I've learned about Black people in this country that I didn't know growing up either. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not
heavily concentrated this last year.
Yes.
If no matter what side of the aisle you're on, all of us got an education in some way.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely this last year. And like I said, in the last, 3 to 5 years, I've really educated myself and become more comfortable. Although I'm still working through some of the things, being biracial and that conflict, but just being more comfortable in my skin and owning it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I want for our students in the program, is to see that as an asset for them as well. Like being, be proud of who you are, where you're from, and use that as an asset, because that makes you unique. Nobody has your same, story. And I want them to use that as kind of this empowerment tool as they're out there engaging with, employers and, pursuing their dreams.
Because by identifying this, seeing it, like you came to the aha moment, it puts that value, it takes the devaluing away. And they start coming and they're like, oh, and then they start searching for and start understanding more about their own power and their own authenticity of who they are.
Right.
That's not easy to come to terms with.
It's not.
Whew. So I'm going to take a swig.
I need one too.
Because that was a lot. I didn't, honestly, I kind of want to cry a little bit, just because it gets emotional to think about somebody seeing themselves in a box.
Yeah, right.
And certainly, a little bit about my story, but like you see that and you come to like, no, this cannot be all that I'm capable of, going to experience. No, not when I see, white leader Dan over there. No offense to Dan.
Or Karen.
Succeeding and everything, and I got to do it all like him and everything, but I don't look like him.
Right.
I'm not like him. It's like, and you come to that aha moment, and it's like you put that value back into someone to see, listen, there are some systems. We don't have to be mad at Dan necessarily. I don't know Dan. I don't know Dan. But let's define where the systems are. Let's see what they are. Let's empower you, while at the same time, someone like me and allies, let's go work with Dan to see what we can do to bring these individuals in and create real cultures of belonging.
It's interesting because my top strength is harmony. So I don't like conflict. I don't really ask a lot of questions. I don't try to stir the pot. And
I can't say the same for myself. Apparently, it just follows me.
That's why I need people like you in
my life. It just follows me.
Because I'm like, no, we shouldn't say something. And you're like, no, Mako, we're going to say something.
Let's just say it.
And I'm like, okay.
They can't kill us. Let's just say it.
So I'm not the type of person, but, and it's funny because my mother is, and she's a small little Japanese woman. And you would think, based off stereotypes, like, oh, they're very reserved and they're very quiet. Not my mom. You guys have not met my mother.
When do I interview her?
Oh my gosh. She will fight a 5-year-old if they're messing with her granddaughter. And I think she's kind of like, I wish that child in that McDonald's play area would say something to my granddaughter, because I want to fight them. And I'm like, oh my God. Like this was my upbringing. Yeah. Like this is her. But I don't have that spirit in me.
Right.
My father was the reserved one.
Right.
And quiet, doesn't ask questions. And so I think not seeing.
He's like, it's just a 5-year-old. Calm down.
It's hilarious, but it's why I love her. But I think growing up and not seeing somebody that looked like me in leadership positions, it's, and it wasn't even like a gender thing. I didn't even see like people who looked mixed, and I was like, but I didn't think about that. I didn't process that growing up, even in college. And I think that's why I never saw myself in those positions. Like people are like, why don't you apply for this? And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm qualified enough. Or, oh, this is a really great opportunity. You should pursue this. And I'm like, no, I don't think I would get in, or I had a lot of self-doubt. And I feel like, well, maybe if I would have seen more people who look like me in those roles, maybe I would have been like, you know what? I can do that. But it just wasn't visually represented for me. So I feel like our students thinking those same things, that if I don't see somebody who looks like me, what does that mean? Am I going to be able to, break the glass ceiling and get into those positions? Do they have this self-doubt? And they do. I mean, there's a lot of that imposter syndrome.
Yes.
With our young people.
Yes.
And I found that in some of the interviews we did with them. We have summer interns, and we hire our own Kauffman Scholars to be our interns over the summer. And I forget what the interview question is, but it seemed like a theme throughout their answers of, oh, I wasn't going to apply because I didn't think I'd get an interview, or I wouldn't, get the job. And I'm just like, why?
Or I didn't apply because the qualifications I didn't know.
Like, why do they think like this? And then I see it in our alumni. So I'll do one-on-one career coaching sessions with them. And they're like, Miss Mako, I'm thinking about doing this, but I don't know. And so I just say, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to have a conversation with them. We're going to talk it out. And as we talk, they start to like come to this realization of, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can apply for that position. I'm qualified, even if I don't meet every bullet point that they're, wanting. I feel like I bring something to this position, and then making sure that they know how to communicate that when they apply. And so, yeah, I saw it with our active scholars and with our young professionals of just not really feel like they were going to be able to make certain moves.
Even with your alumni, they're just,
And it's like they have college degrees.
Yeah.
They've, gone through this entire program.
And they've been through it. Let's talk about how they've had a world of shit of some things in some ways, and some of their stories that they've had to go through.
Exactly. And, I mean, some of the things you hear that these scholars, went through in, high school or college and still came out like, on the other end with a college degree. But again, we have to come back to the realization that at the end of the day, a majority of our scholars are still Black and brown in this country. And so that's something that we've had to have more conversations, intentional conversations with our alums and our scholars about, and talking about how does your race play a role in your career development? How does the intersectionalities of your identity play a role? Because I don't know, if a lot of people I talk to, they said, yeah, in college, we didn't talk about how does being Black impact, me applying for jobs and going in for interviews, and how does the way my name looks, if it's a Black sounding name or a Black looking name, how does that impact my career trajectory and the probability that I will be chosen for an interview? We didn't talk about any of that stuff.
Right.
It was just, here's how you put a resume together. Here's how you do interviews. That's it. Like,
best of luck.
Go out and go to the career fair, find an internship and a job. And we just never had those conversations. And we're finding more and more that those conversations are really important for students to, think about their identities and incorporating those into their experiential learning and the programming and development that we do for them.
It's sad, but there's the empowerment it's so vital, because the sadness is the understanding that this is our lot in life. Still that kind of that mentality. And I have worked in an industry, in light industrial staffing, warehousing, temporary work, temp staffing, and majority 80 anywhere from 80 to 85% of the people that we were putting out into the workforce of these $9 to $11 warehousing jobs, assembly jobs, were people of color, Black and brown people. It just, I don't need a data tracking system to see that. Like, every person walking through our door. And what was interesting is, like, they kind of had the same mentality. Well, this is our lot in life. And I'm like, no, please. So being able to help them in ways and coaching them along the way of just some basic skills of, do you know why, like, for instance, one gentleman didn't know about his paycheck, what was coming out of his paycheck.
Yep.
and taxes, and it had Medicare. And he is like, I don't understand why y'all are taking out my Medicare. I did not sign up for healthcare. And I'm like, okay, let me explain, just sit down with him. But a lot of that development, and they didn't apply for some of the internal jobs that were available because they said, well, I didn't qualify. I go, you've been there every day. You've been out performing and everything. Apply for the job.
Yeah.
And sometimes they would get it, sometimes that they wouldn't. And what was so interesting is they just never felt they were at that level.
Right. Yep.
And what's interesting is it goes with a lot of what you said, like you want to empower them, and even you didn't realize like what you're capable of because you didn't just see representation and those things. But once you got up there, your moment was, I don't have to be a neurosurgeon to do some of these things. I don't have to, those kinds of stuff. And Michelle Obama kind of touched based on that level of that identity of marginalization within her book when she was talking about like, how does somebody from the area of Chicago where she was at and living in this little apartment, but she had family, like how was she ever going to be up there with everyone at in the big attorney in the Ivy League school and everything? She's like, she stressed out. She had to be perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Right.
But once she got up there, the aha moment was just like, and I got to tell you, like once I got up here and she's in her interview, she's like, they weren't that smart.
I know. Right. Yes.
They weren't that smart.
I exact same. I feel like I have to be perfect. Like I have to meet, I'm like, oh, I don't meet this one bullet point on this job description.
Because the moment you step out of line, you are, well, that's that group.
Yes. Yep.
And it's like, they're not that smart. And she felt, and I was like, we have to break that stigma.
Yeah. I completely can relate to, that's probably why I just felt like, and it's funny too, because I don't think I said I don't think my mind actually said the words, I have to be perfect because I'm a person of color.
Yeah.
It just was this natural thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is super, now that I think about it and I just said those words out loud, sound extremely sad. So sad. Like I'm like, well, I didn't equate it to my race, but now talking through it, I understand that maybe that's why I just felt like, no, you aren't qualified. Don't even bother applying for that because you're not going to be the perfect candidate. You're not going to do the job perfectly. And so that's why I'm really interested in reading that book.
That's
Mediocre.
misty. That's misty.
Oh,
that gets misty right there. Because when you think about it, in that sense, is like, and all those kids, and this is just a fraction.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Of the kids and the youth that could use these kinds of programs that have been stuck in those systems and the generations of that have been stuck in those systems. Like that is misty to say that you don't have to be perfect. Because guess what? No one else fucking was.
Nope. And that's why I want to read that book, Mediocre, because it talks about how white men have, climbed the ladder, even though many of them, I don't think were qualified to do a lot of the work.
The bureaucracies.
So I'm really interested to, if anybody has read it or let me know.
Mediocre.
I think I've already downloaded it on my Audible.
I'm just worried if I had a mentor advise it to me and I'm sitting here with a question mark.
I think it just came out in December.
Okay.
I think her book was released in December. I'm trying to think what her other book before that, and it was like a bestseller book too. But yeah, and so when they said, oh, this book is gonna be released in December, I mean, there was a lot of talk around it and saying, like this is, she's basically just putting it out there and saying, like you said, Michelle Obama gets into those positions, she's like, y'all are not that qualified.
This ain't that bad. You didn't get your work done. I have mine done. This ain't that bad. And it's been the most mediocre people that have made just the largest impacts. Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, we've got these story after story of individuals who were like these mediocre, just did something great. And shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about what what should be, what can be, and what some companies are, what some, to provide for those of you who don't want to constantly be reminded that you're doing everything wrong, we will give you some best practices. So I'm a strict one of, you only grow from discomfort. So I want to talk a bit of what is the responsibilities that organizations can do, and some that are doing in this space of helping with the development, kind of basically picking up where you left off.
Yeah, right. Like we were talking earlier, I was saying that I feel like a lot of what, organizations and colleges and universities are doing, which this work needs to be done, but a lot of it is what I learned from race, equity, inclusion training is fish fixing, where you're fixing the fish, which are like your students or your clients, thinking that they're the problem, and focusing a lot of your attention and your programming around, okay, how can we better improve our students, in the job market, and how can we make sure that they're prepared and ready to go out into the workforce. And it's like, yes, those programs and are needed. They're necessary to help, prepare students, inform them, make sure that they feel good about, being ready and applying for jobs and going out there and interviewing. But what's missing from the equation are the companies and the organizations not doing their part, because we hear a lot from them like, oh, these students aren't coming in, prepared, and, colleges and universities are doing a terrible job of, making sure that they're meeting like these career readiness competencies, and then
there's some sort of bullshit assumption that they could just hit the ground running and accomplish that project.
Right. And I feel like, there's every time I hear a story from an alum or my colleague at work who does all of our alumni relations, hears from our alumni what they're going through at some of these organizations that they work at, the common denominator is the companies and the organizations. And it's like, we prepared these students, these scholars, they did what you told them to do. They got college degrees, and yet they're still going into these toxic environments that are not inclusive, that are not welcoming, that are still steeped in white supremacy culture. The procedures, the systems, the structures that make up this organization are still coming from like a white lens, I say, instead of thinking about how does this impact our Black and brown employees? How does this impact our LGBTQ plus employees? So it makes me think like they want to say they're doing the work, but then they actually don't want to do the work. So they say, yes, we want to hire more diverse candidates, yet you're not willing to go the extra step to go out and find them. You want to make the excuse of, well, they're not applying, or we can't find them. And it's like, well, are you really trying? Are you going outside your traditional recruitment box and going to communities and places that would have more diverse candidates for you to talk to and connect with? That's really important in these communities. Like, you can't just walk in off the street because they're going to think you just want something from them. You've got to establish trust. You have to establish a relationship, and then you'll be able to go in and make these connections and talk to them about opportunities at your organization. And one of the examples, I talked about was the recruiter goes to the career fair on campus, sits at their table, looks at their phone the entire time, doesn't lift their head up.
Go to our website and apply. It's like, but you're right here. Go to our website and apply. I'm literally right in front of your face with my resume. Go to our website and apply.
don't even look up at the student.
They will give them, the recruiter will give them their own phone and say, there, you can apply there. Just don't talk to me.
This iPad here, just go
and don't think I haven't witnessed that. I have sadly witnessed that.
All the time. And then it's like, you know, hey, if there's some time in your schedule or build time to say, hey, why don't I, because usually the fair is, so at my alma mater, it's at the basketball arena, like, or it's in, you know, there's like 500 companies there. So they need a really large space. And so they don't actually go to campus and say, okay, are there some student groups that I could talk to, potentially, you know, multicultural student groups having a meeting, or can we, you know, gather some of them and, you know, we can bring in some food and just sit down and talk to them about our opportunities, more of a smaller setting to create connection versus, you know, informal setting and personal at a fair with hundreds of recruiters and students. That one extra step, I think, makes a huge difference, but it seems like, you know, companies and organizations aren't really taking that time to put in that work to find those candidates. But then it's not just a numbers game. You have to also make sure that once they're, you know, with you at your organization, that you retain them. So what are those things that you know your company is doing to
nurture that retention?
Yeah. So I feel like it just seems like over and over I'm hearing the same stories from our alums, and you see it from organizations that are very similar in terms of what they are not doing in that, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion space.
If organizations would take an opportunity, especially after this year, just to step back, pause, release the self-righteousness, and just see some of the mistakes that are there, research the data, see what's going on in talent trends and forecasting, and just settle into like, why don't we look at a different way?
Yeah.
Or how about we look at another way? Because even now, you know, the mass resignation and everything that we're seeing with the exodus of talent and the boom of gig economy, and your scholars are just going to be, they're going to be gig aficionados.
Yes,
they are.
I can't even count on my hands now.
How you keep posting on LinkedIn. I'm like, you go. Yeah.
Doing their own thing. Like, I don't need to answer to anybody. Yeah. I got this. I can do it myself.
Yeah. And so I think we were saying earlier, like for them, like, and these jobs that they've left, like good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. We told y'all it was coming up, the resignation. If you don't start being, let's start with kindness. If you just don't start being kind to your employees, they're going to leave. And the data isn't now, all the research, is now caught up to them.
Yep.
And now people are like, well, what do we do? It's like, take a deep breath. You got to go back into nurturing and cultivating in your communities.
You have to remember, like, these are people that work for you. Like, these are still people at the end of the day. And it's really interesting. So I'm getting actually ready to transition from my role at Kauffman Scholars, since the program is getting ready to sunset next year, and, you know, fulfill that commitment.
I love that, sunset.
Yes, we want to use positive language.
It
like,
is. I
like,
love
it's
it.
Ending like no,
it's sunset.
It's sunsetting. Like it's a bittersweet thing, but it's you know, we've done great work, and
I didn't have to close my franchise. It was a sunset.
It's sunset.
It was the franchise sunset.
So, you know, I had to do a exit survey, and one of the questions asked, "Does your supervisor do you believe your supervisor thinks of you or as a person first?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
I hope so.
That. Oh yeah, I was like 100%. Shout out to Nisha Ford.
Yeah.
She's amazing. That is why I hate to leave, because she is a person that cares about the people that work, that, you know, report to her. As she cares about them as people first, not as associates, not as, you know, coaches, or, you know, whatever your title is. You are a person first. She doesn't ask any questions. If, like, you know, you have a family member you have to tend to, you know, you have a child. She is very much about the person. And so I'm really glad that they asked that question on the exit survey, and that I could honestly say like, oh, 100%. I think I put 1000% in the comments box, because I'm very gracious, and I'm very proud to have called her not only my supervisor, but my friend. And I think that's why
that's wonderful.
We are friends, because she does. And I feel like that's everybody that works for the organization, is that people care about each other as people.
Yeah, what's wrong with a friendship or that allyship friendship within an organization? Those are the bonds that really keep an organization going, keep your teams going.
But I think supervisors, people who are set in their old ways, are afraid that if I cross that line and that boundary between employee and supervisor or manager, that relationship is going to, the employee is going to take advantage of that in some shape or form. And I don't know why, but I feel like that is why our team is so strong, and why our organization is so strong. I know a lot of people we are at the Kauffman Foundation, and a lot of the other Kauffman associates that work there are always admiring our team. They can see it.
Yeah, it's a texture.
They can see like, you guys get along so well. You guys seem like you guys are really happy over there. You guys do like team builders. You hang out with each other outside of work, and they see it. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right. And it sounds so simple. Like, all you do, you just treat your employees like people, but I think it just comes from, the history of work.
I think it comes from a group not a group. I'll say, I think it definitely comes from, that's been the system. Yeah. It's like, you're my employee, I'm your boss. Yes. There's a line we need to make sure to keep here. And it's like, well, that never got me anywhere. Yeah. And I'm so glad that we have this generation of workforce that's coming up and coming into these leadership positions, and they're saying like, no, that's not helped.
I think it's just establishing like respect. Like, you can still have respect for one another and still have that supervisor employee relationship, and have respect for one another, but not make it so like robotic and impersonal. Like, I'm a person, you're a person. Like, why can't we establish that and develop that trust and that relationship? But I think that's why, students are going into jobs saying, I don't feel like people care about me here, that I'm thought about here as a person. My input isn't respected. And so I'm out.
Do you made we'll wrap this up, but I'm curious about a point about, because you said a little bit ago about, well, we don't do their projects, we don't do the work for them. And I was curious, I was like, have people made comments that that's the case? Have things come back around where like, oh, well, they do their work for them and stuff? Well, I just wondered, like, okay. Yeah, no. I was curious.
I think it's
because I could see an organization. The point I was trying to make in here is, I could see an organization in their mindset, like if they're not doing well, or something like that, or if this scholar resigns or something from the role, and they say, well, then just like they do colleges, well, they did not prepare them well enough. Right, Kauffman, Casey Scholars was too soft on them. They need to be like, and it's just like, what? No, you need to, reside in the fact that maybe you were a jackass.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, nobody's ever like said that, but I think not enough credit is given to the students and their families. It's this white savior complex of, oh, if it had not been for Mr. Kauffman and that Kauffman Foundation, these poor children, these poor Black and brown kids would have never gone to college and never graduated. So good on the Kauffman Foundation. And it's like, no. No, that's not how it's not how it is. Like, we filled a gap in saying like, okay, because a lot of the students have said, had it not been for the foundation. And I'm like, yeah, but you put in a lot of the work yourself too. We just filled in that gap, that equity gap of, you want to go to, this institution, like, okay, Kauffman can help fill that gap in terms of scholarship dollars to help make sure that you have books and housing and food and tuition fees paid for, but you have to go in and actually go to class and do your part. Do your part. And many of them did that. So it was just, I see us as, filling these equity gaps in these systems and structures that were put in place to not set them up for success, and at institutions that were not built with them in mind. Yeah. And so making sure that we just make sure, like, oh, there's a gap there. Let's fill that in and make sure that they are able to get over it. But they're the ones that walked over the gap and did the work.
And from that, from knowing what we're seeing now in the current landscape of workforce and talent acquisition and recruiting, that's the call to action. Right. Is you've done your part. We've got the development going. There's so many organizations out there that are investing into these underrepresented communities and providing this kind of full cycle of development, full scale development. And that's the call to action, is these employers need to step up. Right. They need to do their part. Their recruiters need to be more creative. The recruiters need to step out of their fear and their comfort zones. Right. To be able to have those conversations.
Think about these students. They're stepping outside of their comfort zones. Yeah. Going into, I don't know why, Black and brown students have to disarm themselves and be uncomfortable in white spaces. It's like, no, let's flip it around. And I think just given the conversation that's happened in the last year, with the murder of George Floyd, the conversation and the power has shifted. Yes. And students feel more empowered, more educated to do their research ahead of time on a company or organization and learn more about the culture and talk to people who work there and learn more, not just about the jobs and not about the pay, but what is it going to be like for me as an employee there? And they feel more empowered to ask questions about diversity, equity, inclusion in their interview process, talk about it on their cover letters.
I smile just because I love it. I love it when people ask me a good question. Everyone's like, "Ooh, good question," but I know it makes employers sweat.
And you can see them kind of, wiggle in their seats, like, "Oh, they asked the question," but it's like, okay, like, where have you been the last year? Candidates are going to start asking these questions now. Yeah. Be ready, like, be prepared, and then be able to give authentic answers. Like, if you're not doing the work, say it. Like, don't come up with some answer.
Yeah, we have a ping pong table.
Yeah. I mean, don't, like, that's inclusion. Yeah. No, just say we are still working through that. Be honest. You don't have to have the perfect answer.
That's great. We're working through it.
Yeah, we're here are the steps we're taking. And we want to do this better. We want to make sure that, our current employees that may come from marginalized communities are supported and feel inclusive, and we're including them in the conversation to make sure that this is a better place to work, and a place that people want to work. We want that rumor to go around that this is a great place to work. And I just want companies to just own up to it more. But they just need to be prepared that these questions are coming, and students feel like it's not going to make me feel like, because I think they didn't want to ask those questions because they're like, oh no, here comes this, Black person asking about diversity again. Like, no, now they're like, no, I'm going to ask about it. And guess what? It's okay to ask about it, because I think the power differential has shifted, and they feel like I could ask these questions of a company during an interview, because guess what? I'm interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing me.
And organizations can fix this. Yeah. This is fixable.
It is.
These are totally fixable things that they're able to do. It's just a matter of stepping a little bit outside of that comfort zone. So Michelle Wimes. At Children's Mercy, she posted, and I can't remember who she credited the original statement from. Dan Wynn, I think. I'm not sure. I'm so sorry. But she posted about Sha'Carri winning the athlete. Am I saying the name right? 100 meter relay. And she won, and she had the orange hair.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
The nails.
Uh-huh.
Am I saying is that
I've seen some posts about it, but
okay.
yeah.
Fingernails.
Yes.
Like my husband and I watched that so many times. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I want orange hair. I'm just like, there we go. And I've never believed for 1 second after that there has ever really been a labor talent shortage within our country.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked 20 years in this space and have been through all diverse facets of all different industries when it comes to talent acquisition and that. And it was interesting because Michelle posted, don't tell me. Look at those nails, that hair, that tattoo.
Yep.
One.
Yep.
And don't tell me it had anything that had held them back on their performance.
Right.
So organizations, that's your call to action, is you got to release that bias.
Yes.
And see what you are harming within your within not getting that talent.
Just let go. Like, I mean, that's all of this. Like, I mean,
that's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. I mean,
that's really pretty.
I've been hesitant.
Yeah.
Also because of like, the environments I've worked in. I'm like, ooh, is this not going to be acceptable? And I'm just like, well, you know what? If they don't accept it, maybe I shouldn't work there.
So is that considered a sleeve?
It is. It goes all the way up from my shoulder down to my wrist.
What's the symbolism?
So I cannot keep a plant or a flower alive to save my life. So this is my garden. But the flowers represent,
we're talking about sad things that.
But I mean, tattoos have to mean something to me to put them on my body, whereas my husband is different. He has a sleeve and it's more of artistic things like, oh, that looks cool, and he'll get it tattooed. But for me, I'm from Kansas, so I have sunflowers, which is the state flower.
Yeah.
I'm half Japanese, so I have cherry blossoms, which represent my Japanese side. And then if you don't know this, each month has a flower associated with it. So like September is the aster and morning glories, and so I have those tattooed. My daughter's birthday's in January, which is a carnation. So
I'm a carnation.
Have a carnation tattooed, and then it is true. Once you get one, it's addictive, and so I'll finish up my garden with the flowers that represent my parents' birthday months.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
I forgot you're from small town Kansas.
Well, I'm from the largest city in the state of Kansas, which is Wichita. Not Kansas City, Kansas.
Oh,
Wichita's the largest.
Because my husband's from Western Kansas.
That's right. I said I think I've been to his small town.
Little small town out by Goodland,
Goodland's not that small.
Well, it's
for Western Kansas.
I think it's 25 minutes from Goodland.
Oh, what is it?
Sharon Springs.
I've been there. It's north. It's in the corner.
Isn't
it?
Where I grew up is much smaller. Yeah, it's up in the corner.
Yeah, it's in the corner. Yep, I've been there.
Yeah, but what he drove me through, I was like, holy cow! But it just, I always love hearing the stories of people from Kansas, who just diverse people from Kansas and everything, and talking about I think it's just a wonderful thing. So the fact that you're in those areas and that you have sunflowers, because I think if my husband were going to get a tattoo, he would probably get a sunflower in his Kansas, because he is. He was born in Alaska until 5, but KU, Kansas, physician, all the way, baby. Like KU, like all the way, Kansas.
Yeah, I was like, I felt like, okay, it's tasteful. Like, it's not offensive. It's not like your typical. I think a lot the tattoos have changed. The things people get tattooed. People who get tattoos have changed too. Because I think a lot of people are absolutely shocked to know that I have a sleeve. Like
really?
They wouldn't expect somebody like me to have a sleeve, I guess. So yeah, but I think a lot of the tattoos you see more women with tattoos now, and so yeah, I think it's just it's more acceptable now. I think in the workplace, I'm seeing more articles come out on LinkedIn about.
It's just a ridiculous policy to even have anymore. It's ridiculous.
I mean, I get it. Like if you've got like this tattoo like on your face, maybe that can be a little distracting.
But how often is that happening?
Know,
where it's just like I'm not. I mean, I'm not saying those people would not be a good worker, but it's just I don't think they were like, hey, would it be okay if I worked the front desk? Like, is that what you want to do? Because and
it just shocks me that laws have to be passed just so that people aren't discriminated against because of their hair. Like, are you kidding me?
That's one of the dumbest things.
Just so you don't discriminate me because of the way I wear my hair.
Yeah.
And to have to think about that
and the organic nature of my hair.
Yeah. Right. It just really I mean, I shouldn't say that it does, but yeah, and I never thought about it either, but that, a black person may have to think about the way they style their hair and how that could impact their employability. I'm like, I'm going to say this, but I don't feel like any white person had to ever think about that.
No, they didn't. And I could tell you, when I saw the stuff on social media that was picking up like the hair, I didn't know for sure. I was like, what is this? I work in diversity inclusion, and I think like HR, we don't know everything. And the one that says they do, have a talk with them. But I didn't know. I was like, well, what is this that they're bringing up? There's some anger here. I want to kind of research what it was. But yeah, the law and the policies and things of the appropriateness of what hair should look like and everything. Right. And then I thought, I was working when I was working with a client, there was an individual, great, qualified, ready to go, and worked in healthcare, was a nurse, ready to go. Got some feedback from the client, being able to sit down with them. Was like, what's the deal? And they're like, oh, there was just something. I go, what was it? Well, I don't know if this is the right term, but I thought their hair, there was nappy hair. And I just go, oh my God. I go, please don't say that. And I go, that's why you're not hiring? No, there's just something. And I go, I really need you to give me some detail. But they could not answer why.
Yeah.
So I took that a little further back, and when I was reading this article about the rules and regulations of black girl hair, and I thought, how many times have I seen or heard a young black lady that has come into my office say, I'm sorry about my hair. And it would be like a fro. Mm-hmm. And I go, what's wrong with your hair? Oh, I don't have it down. I go, it's great. I didn't realize until that moment. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And then I read that article. I was like, and that was a moment for me of understanding and having a little more empathy of understanding that level of marginalization.
Right.
And I was like, you have to worry about your hair. Like that.
Things.
It's like, my hair just grows out like this. Like, it just does this. It does.
Because it has everything to do with how I do my job.
But I have to pay $200 to get it straightened and all these things to make it look more appropriate for the workplace.
Yeah. I mean, if you could see, if you've seen movies like Good Hair with Chris Rock, and you talk to some women who were trying to make their way up the ladder in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, you see that the chemicals that they put in their hair to straighten their hair to look more flowy and straight, like white women's hair. I mean, what they went through, and I mean, that stuff is extremely dangerous. Like, if you watch Good Hair, like it's incredibly amazing that stuff is allowed to be sold to people to put near their face. And
yeah, it takes like the pictures, it's taking layers of skin off people, bald, and I'm like, oh my God.
So yeah,
and just for the sake, they didn't think they looked good enough for an interview or a job. They didn't think they looked good enough.
Yeah. So I've heard from some women here in Kansas City who've talked about what they did to, quote unquote, fit in more and appease to white culture and be more white presenting in order to get, positions and to move up in the organization. And they'll say like, yeah, I code switched. I sold out maybe just so that I could progress. And you don't think about what that does to a person mentally, internally and physically, what the additional steps that they have to go through to just get to like management or director level, and white people don't have to, even second guess those things. They can really focus on their talent but it's like for Black and brown people, they have to think about that and be perfect on top of how do I look, how do I present.
They have to try and destigmatize while interviewing all at the same time. That's tough.
So that's what we're hoping to empower students. And I don't want to say empower them like we're giving them the power, but help them realize like you are an asset. You have capital that you bring to the table. Don't think that you don't bring something because of where you're from or what you look like. That's a strength. That's an asset. That's something that you should put forward and use that to your advantage.
I love that. So whenever we were out, I want to just real quick this story because this might make us misty, but I served as met you in diversity and inclusion, and then the Society for Human Resources Management a few years ago, they partnered with JAG Jobs for America's Graduates, and helping with Johnny C. Taylor was very much about making sure like let's put some investments with veterans and also in our underrepresented communities and workforce development, because SHRM was seeing the writing on the wall. They were like, hey, workforce development, y'all, because this talent's going to do something. And so Jobs for America's Graduates, and so at the time I was working as the chair for the local SHRM chapter for workforce development, and they said this is going to be a new program to partner with this, put together a program. And Central Academy for Excellence off Linwood was where the program was. It was only there. And so I was like, well, what program? What do we put together? No one had ever done it. And so I was like, why don't we just do like a professional mini style conference for these juniors and seniors to see what it's like from human resources professionals to just things like little breakout sessions, interviewing, all the different kinds of stuff all day. We'll have pizza, networking, lunch, things like that. And so we went and this is a lot of what I know that organizations, if they just step outside of that comfort zone into these communities and just have some good, honest connection with them. And so I went and I did a couple of site visits with the coordinator and then met with the principal. And I think it was the second I sat down with the principal. And I mean, there's no doubt, the majority of people who work in human resource management are white, female.
Yes. Yep.
And so I go in and I was like, I just want to make sure a lot of our volunteers were that demographic. And so I wanted to go in and sit down with the principal. And I said, I go, this is going to be very awkward for me to say. And I go, I honestly don't even know how to ask it, but I'm just going to say it just because I go, what is the best way for us to respond, communicate with the students, because there's a lot of individuals who are coming here to volunteer that have never walked through a metal detector. And they're going to be faced with a reality that is not of their world. So help me. And so she's like, great question. And I was like, okay, thank you. Because I didn't know. And she's like, and she said she's just the fact that you are here. You are here. You're giving the respect and that time back to them, and you see them.
Yeah. You came to them.
You came to them. And I remember I was stressed out because I was coordinating all these little different moves in this little conference thing we were doing all day. And I wasn't speaking up loud enough, and I was trying to instruct the students. And I was like, so if you just get over here, if you just, how's everybody doing? And one of the young ladies, she came up to me and she just kind of sat there and she got right next to me and she put her head on my shoulder and she goes, "You gonna have to speak up, boo." And I just remember that moment and I wanted to break down and cry, and I just ended up giving her a hug. But that day, the light that came out of those kids' faces and everything that us spending that time with them that day, and we got to hear their stories. We got to hear so much about how they've overcome so much in the communities and everything, and in their homes, and just where they are. And that I'll never forget in that moment. I was like, we are not doing enough to make these connections.
Yeah, that's what's important. Yeah. They're people just like, you and me, and they just want to get to know you.
Yeah.
And they want to know that you're there for honest and authentic reasons, and that you're there to spend time and just learn about them and support them in whatever it is that they're wanting to do. And I've learned those same lessons. Most of the recruitment I used to do for college, for my alma mater, was out in Western Kansas, which is predominantly white. And so they're all got questions about the university and getting involved and all of that. But when I was out in Wyandotte County, the questions, I would give my 20-minute spiel about, this is why you should, come to the university. And question, I'm like, oh yeah, question right there. What's your question? What are you? I'm like, I know exactly what that question is. You've been sitting there the last 20 minutes
interesting. I didn't get that question.
Because they sit there
there's a gay white boy up in the school.
Because they're like, oh, white.
Right.
They're always trying to okay, look at her hair is different. And so they wanted to know that, where are you from? Just more personal questions versus questions about the college. And I was like, okay, this is where I have to start, because they are like, why are you here? We don't care about your institution. But if you want to have a conversation with us and let us get to know you better, then maybe we'll be more willing to hear what you have to say. And we found that with many communities when we were recruiting in Wyandotte County, or if we were recruiting in Southwest Kansas, which is predominantly Hispanic, Latinx communities, you have to make sure that you're also including the families in that conversation, not just the student, but the family is part of that whole decision-making process of, where's their student going to go to college? And so it's connection. And I feel like that's the foundation. Yeah. It's just that connection and building trust and relationships. And then I think from there, everything else kind of makes sense and it falls into place.
It falls into place.
It's easy to do if you can start there.
Yeah, if you can develop that culture, you won't have to go looking for talent. It will come to you.
Exactly.
It will come to you.
Yes. Yeah, and that's usually how it happens, right? I feel like for most organizations, it's word of mouth. Yeah. When I was working at the foundation, people are always like, you guys have any job openings? And they hear about, the environment and what it's like to work there. And I think that's what, don't companies say that your best advertisement are your customers? It's word of mouth. And so I don't know why.
Your best advertisement is also your employees.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just because if they believe in the product, they're out there and about it just grows.
Yep. Yeah.
So what's next for Mako?
Ooh, yeah. So hopefully this doctorate. So pray for me, guys. Pray. Think about it. I got dissertation. Dissertation vibes. Send them my way.
I got my church lady wigs down here. We're going to have to break out in some testifying and prayer.
Oh, we've made it this far. And that's a huge, especially I'm a first generation college student.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So
and congratulations to your parents. I know that's a sacrifice.
It is. Yeah. And it's funny because my mom doesn't understand. So you'll be a doctor, and I'm like, yeah, but not like her definition is medical doctor, and I'm like, yeah, no, not like that. It's like academic doctor. So explain. Even when I got my master's, she didn't comprehend that. When they went to my graduation, she's like, so Mako's graduating again? And she didn't really understand what that meant. Like when I graduated from high school and college, yeah, she got that. But those next steps, she's like, man, Mako really likes school.
Yeah.
Like, I do. So that's currently I'm working on my dissertation, and hopefully finalizing that in December.
Okay.
And then like I mentioned earlier, I'm transitioning after 7.5 years with Kauffman Scholars. An opportunity came up. I was hoping to stay with the program. Most staff will transition next summer.
Okay.
And I was hoping to stay through the sunset. But this opportunity came along at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So UMKC offered me a position doing career-related work for a new program that is going to officially launch in the fall of 22. And so this next year is the planning year. But the primary group of students it will serve are first-generation students and Pell-eligible students, which we all know the majority of students in those groups are going to be Black and brown students. So I'm really excited. So it's a great step professionally for me. Kind of a title, kind of working my way up the ladder, so to speak, in that way. And so I'm really excited. My goal was to get back to a college campus because everyone's like, what are you going to do when you get your doctorate? And I'm like, I'd love to go back and work for a college university and do work, with multicultural students, something in, diversity, equity, inclusion. And so, just kind of blending the two of the career development and readiness with the DEI work. And so, I love working with college students. So I'm really excited.
Well, there couldn't be a more perfect person for that role.
You.
You bet. My sister-in-law works there, so I'll have to get y'all connected. Y'all go have lunch. She's wonderful. She's over at the law school. But anyway, so how do people get connected with you? What's the best way?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So Mako Miller. Just type that in, and you can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and that's really the primary way. I'm on Twitter very little.
I need to get better at it.
Yeah, I'm terrible at Twitter. I'm kind of ashamed. I once TikTok and all that started, I was like, you know what? No.
It got overwhelming. I gotta know there's so much.
And then the creativity with the TikTok, and I just I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with the social medias that I know. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to, since I am transitioning and don't know my email or anything like that yet. So
Gotcha. Well, I can't wait to hear all the good things and see all the good things that you're going to do.
Well, I appreciate you
stay connected.
Welcoming me into your home and in this space. And this was fun.
It was fun. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank
all
you.
Right.